Well, today was a good day in the Empire of Rust. We was at a auction and was able to score some more junk that we didn't need, spend some money that we didn't have, and end up with more projects because I don't have enough of them and I have too much free time. So here's this canary yellow saw that I just picked up. Now, I mean, this really isn't normally in my wheelhouse of desirable saws, although it meets a lot of the criteria. It's old and it's kind of cool. I will say I did break one of my ethical rules about buying this type of stuff. I spent more than $20. So yeah, I kind of hate to admit that, but this thing is actually surprisingly clean underneath that dirt. So when I was walking out through the pallet row, and I basically almost tripped over this thing. It was sitting there. I looked down and it's like, oh, an old McCulloch. And then I kind of looked closer and let's see that it's a ProMac 1010. Now I had part of one of these one time. It was just the power head and it was blown up. I mean, yeah, I'm still counting that. But I know somebody else that runs one of these, still uses it to cut wood. Pretty decent saw from what I remember. I actually redid the carburetor on it a time or two, and it was a good running saw. Had a lot of power for how old it was. So I actually stopped and gave it a little bit closer look. And sure enough, as I'm looking, well heck, there's not a whole lot of paint missing on this thing. It looks to be in half decent shape. Gave the pull cord a rip, and it's got good compression, rolls over smooth. I picked the thing up, start looking at it. Sure enough, I mean, yeah, it's a pretty solid old saw. So then what really got me is, I slide the cover off, and it still's got the original bar on it with some paint left. I mean, how often do you see that? I thought that said rocket tip on there at first. So yeah, everything looks like it's been well kept. I mean, this thing's definitely been stored indoors. It's only got a 16-inch bar on it, but, beggars can't be choosers. So I decided it was worth, standing around in the blazing sun and, waiting for this thing to come across the auction block. I mean, it's not too often that you find older saws like this that haven't been, destroyed and beat on. Everything on this saw is solid and tight. I mean, everything seems like it's going to work on it. Now, it may need some carburetor work. Probably the diaphragm may be old and dried out. Fuel lines, the basic stuff. But, boy, hopefully this doesn't take too much to get back in operation. It's got that fancy electronic ignition. Let's see if there's any dinosaur tar in here. Ooh, yeah, there's a little bit. Yeah, it's not terrible. I'd estimate that maybe only at 4 to 5 years old gas, so I'd say she was running fairly recently, folks. Wow, you pulled the side cover off, and boy, it's clean on the inside too. Can't be too many hours on that clutch. And one of my favorite things about all the older saws is the muffler system. Well, if you could call it a muffler system, it's more of an exhaust guide. Looks like this one pretty much comes straight out of the engine. Spits the exhaust over 90 degrees this way, and then up and out the side panel. And that's about it. We don't need no spark arrestor. Well, we couldn't take it anymore. Broke out the WD-40 and the old socks, and we're actually just cleaning this thing up. Man, look at that shine. I can't believe that old paint underneath there, boy. Really coming back to life. Now we're going one level deeper into the bowels of this thing. And again, man, I gotta say, I'm impressed. I mean, a little bit of cleanup and really the carburetor and stuff was already that clean. The filter and all that, it must have been always serviced, or heck, maybe it's never even been changed because it hasn't been used that much. A lot of times these end up warping or whatever, you know, and they don't make a very good seal up around here, and you get all the sawdust and grunge and everything underneath. But this thing is surprisingly clean. I don't know if I'm going to be able to use this to cut wood after we're done here. It's almost starting to look too nice. And just like that, we're halfway done. I can't believe how well this thing cleaned up. I mean, look at that. The paint's shining. I mean, that's more shine than like, well, all of my vehicles have. I mean, I've spent more time actually cleaning this than most of my vehicles combined. I'm really surprised at how well that thing cleaned up. I mean, now the next step though, because we're not going to just let it sit, you know, completely as a, you know, a decorative piece. We're actually going to get the carburetor going through and see if we can get this thing to run. Let me take that back. We're going to get this thing to run. Now, surprisingly, the fuel line is actually still kind of flexible. I mean, it would be awesome if the diaphragm down in the carburetor was also, you know, still usable. I mean, well, who knows if that's original or not, but I'd like to think that that fuel line definitely looks original. That keep as many stock parts on there as we can. Yep, she got fire. So we'll put some good old Klotz mix in here. Yeah, a little bit more. That should do her. Alright. See what happens here. Yeah, she's starting to go. After running this thing, I legit had to do some research to make sure there wasn't a piece of the muffler missing. And from what I can tell, I mean, that's it. That was the pancake style, I guess they said. And yeah, these things are known for having a good bark to them and sound. Hearing protection is definitely recommended. Now, as you can tell by those numbers, these came from an auction. And auctions are not something that I've been into for a long time. I'd say, within the past so many years, it's become more of a something I've done often. And you can definitely see how a lot of people end up making that kind of a hobby. I mean, it's fun at times because you never know what you're going to get out there. I mean, it's like a garage sale or any other type of swap meet find. It's kind of the adventure is finding something special or, well, finding something you didn't know you need until you find it. The entertainment factor is certainly there. Sometimes it's interesting just seeing, what the market value on equipment or pieces and parts are. Other times it's you shaking your head at stuff that's going for twice the brand new market value for something that's old and used up. I mean, I guess it's true. Sometimes when people get into a bidding war, I mean, you're fighting against that other person more than you are actually trying to buy the item. Being that I'm cheap, I mean, I try not to get caught up in that too much. Usually when I see something, I pretty much come to a pretty firm price ahead of time, and that's all I want to bid. I mean, for the right price, I'll buy almost anything, but even if it's something I want, it's like on eBay. You got to come up with a price ahead of time, not keep inching it up, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. It's like you have a ceiling, and once you reach that, even if it's an odd number, I usually don't go to some even number. It's always something kind of odd, just so, like, maybe beat out the other guy, and that's exactly where you think that top level price is. One interesting aspect of bidding against somebody else on something you're looking at is that even if you win it or maybe you lose and they outbid you, a lot of the people that you're bidding against, they could be into the same thing you are. So they may have a part you need, or you end up selling something or horse trading because it kind of brings people of similar interests together, in that market. And it is weird though how kind of it seems like the perceived value of something that you're looking at changes when you're at an auction. You'll maybe see stuff going for $2, and you're not bidding on it because you're like, I don't really need that. I'm not interested in it. And then later on, you think to yourself, man, for $2, I should have bought that. And it's not like if you're at a yard sale or if you just see something for sale online and you've got time to stew on it. Sometimes you got to make a snap decision. Might not always be a wise decision. Sometimes you overpay. Sometimes you underpay too, and that always kind of sucks. You're always thinking back, man, I should have put a little bit more towards that, or I should have thrown a bid in on that because nobody else was buying it. Or even worse, when something no sales, and you're like, well, heck, I'd have put $1 in on that. And it's interesting some of the characters and people you see show up. I swear, some people go out there with a unlimited checkbook and just start buying everything just for the heck of buying it. Whether they need it, whether it's trash, whether they got a way to haul it home sometimes, it seems. It's like some people are just on a roll and they just want to buy. I mean, I wish I could make it to that stage someday. Well, at the end of the day, I guess I'm glad that there's not more local auctions I actually make it to. Saves me money in the long run, and it does take a lot of time standing out there all day, but every so often it's good to just go out and hang out at an auction and see what's going on and watch the show.